Investigative reporter, author, professor at Point Park College, Bill Moushey. Wow, you threw this book together about the Penn State scandal in record time.
Yeah, I mean, it was a situation where we thought that the idea of what was going on out there, of course there's going to be a considerable litigation, but the idea of how this happened is what intrigued us, and that's why we did it. So what we did was build a timeline of the criminal allegations, but we also did a timeline of what people on that campus had done or didn't do during the long period of time that went on, over a decade of allegations of abuse against Sandusky when people knew about it repeatedly.
So you characterize it as a cover-up or just people doing nothing, which I guess is sort of the same but not quite?
You can categorize it, you can use whatever word you want, but the bottom line is that administrators knew about these allegations dating back to 1998. One of the lawsuits that were subsequently filed goes back further. But we have documentation that it's a bunch of people knew in 98. And then in 2002, when Mike McQuarrie, the assistant coach, had a similar statement.
Said he saw somebody being anally raped.
It's the second locker room abuse allegation in 4 years. That went all the way up through the chain of command, and it didn't get done.
Why wouldn't they? I understand you don't want a scandal to break, but with all those people knowing, why couldn't they figure out that it was bound to break sooner or later, so they should have done something earlier to save themselves, if nothing else?
Well, you could also look at it from the point of view that it worked for 10 years.
Oh, yeah,
and one of the parts of our book is that there's this culture of silence up there, an insularity that what goes on there stays there, and that's a nice...
It's even a bit more intense than Vegas.
Yeah.
What happens in Penn State stays in Penn State.
Yeah, and it's even in this situation, this is a lot worse. But the idea that they want, maybe they were protecting a brand. They bring $53 million in profit into that thing a year, but the idea that good people who were known as good and decent people their whole lives would not put their foot down on something like that. I kept thinking over and over while doing this, what would I do? And what would any normal person do? And I can't imagine walking away from that.
I know you're not the judge and jury here. It's not your desire necessarily, or maybe it is, I don't know, to convict anybody of anything, but what is Sandusky's possible defense? Everyone else in the world is lying? Please believe me?
I've covered hundreds of cases over the years, and if not thousands, and most of the sexual abuse cases I've covered are one-on-one, he said, she said arguments. This one has no forensic evidence, but and the kids are not time date specific in a lot of them, which I'm sure Joe Amendola is going to exploit
the defense
in cross-examination. Yeah. But I have never seen a case where 52 charges are filed and there's 10 accusers of abuse and another collection of about 5 to 10 people who saw things, like the McQuarrie and the janitors and others who eventually reported that what they'd seen. I've just never seen one end in acquittal. Will he get convicted on all the charges? I doubt it. But
you don't see him walking.
If there's any felony convictions in these kinds of cases, he's looking at life. The guy's 68 years old.
Is there an analogy to the scandal of abuse in the Catholic Church, in that people think when you criticize the abuse, you're criticizing the institution, and how could anybody criticize this sacred institution?
Well, yes, and I've been the subject of a lot of abuse, not only during the process of interviewing over 100 people we interviewed, and we probably approached 300, and 200 slammed the phones, didn't answer letters, told us to get lost, and I'm used to that. But the idea that the protection of their brand, of the school, has gone way beyond anything I ever imagined.
In other words, they seem much more concerned about the reputation of the school than they do the horrible crimes that allegedly were committed.
Or much more concerned that they think it's horrible that I'm writing a book about it, too.
Did they think nobody was going to write about this?
I don't know. During the course of the event, as you might imagine, television trucks lined the place right in front of Old Main. But you also know that the night that Joe Paterno was fired, the reaction of the students was to riot, and they turned over and started on fire a television truck.
I remember that, yeah.
And not
that that's not a fun thing to think of, generally speaking,
right.
but it's a really screwed up reaction for
and
this. Yeah.
I did feel pushback all the time from that kind of situation, but I just, you know,
But did you lose any friends over this?
Not yet that I know of, but I mean, the fact of the matter is there's 550,000 Penn State alumni, the largest alumni association in the United States. They're protective of their brand, but look at the brand from this perspective. In 1998, if Gary Schultz would have, the administrator who was in charge of the police department, who knew about the 98 accusations, if he would have done something about it right then, they would have come out of it looking great. They would have preserved their brand. In 2002, if Joe Paterno would have put his foot down and said, hey, we can't have this. It's children. And Joe even said before his untimely or timely demise, he said he wished he would have done more. And, you know, you look back on it and you see all of these people that had knowledge of this stuff, and when is somebody going to say this is not right? And they're, you know, maybe they would have had a temporary smack in the face as far as their own brand, and the lily white image of Penn State might for once be compromised. But if these allegations against these kids are true, these kids are scarred for life. And if they would have stopped this in '98, there's like at least 10 kids that would not have been abused.
I started to ask you if there's any single thing that stood out that surprised you the most, but maybe you've already answered that question.
Yeah,
that all these people kept silent for all that time.
I don't get it. I frankly can't get it. Mike McQuarrie, he's going to be a key witness in this case, and he is going to get cross-examined brutally on the idea that why did he not, he went to his dad's buddy, Paterno. Now, if your house is on fire, are you going to call your dad, or are you going to call the fire department? You know, Joe Paterno says he didn't know anything about the '98 event, despite the fact that he had a very close relationship with the police and all the other administrators. In fact, he named the athletic director, who was his former player, Tim Curley. If Joe would have just said, wait a minute, this isn't right. And I've read his grand jury testimony very many times, and it was very clear that Joe was unbelievably squeamish about the idea that, like, our dads and grandparents about child, they can't fathom.
I don't want to know.
They can't fathom that.
Yeah.
It came right through the words that Joe was going, geez, I don't.
Are his actions defensible based on that, in your view?
He said himself they were indefensible. The issue of letting something like that go, and he wasn't even that close with Sandusky. You know, he just wasn't that close with him, and to let it go is something that Joe wanted back.
So a lot of Penn State lovers are now Bill Moushey haters. Are you not? I mean, there's no threats on your life or anything to that degree yet, are
No,
there?
I was out of town for 3 days, and I was wondering, and my wife was out of town too for a couple of days. I was wondering if I was going to see some bricks through the windows when I came home. But frankly, there's been some internet banter about the book and our motives and everything. I don't have any motives.
Are you accused of scurrilous motives?
Yeah.
Well, other than, making a buck and writing a book, which people do all the time, is there something wrong with that?
You certainly write a book to try to make a buck here and there. I mean, I'm not going to get rich from this book, and I wrote this book because I thought it needed to be done. And if somebody wants to look back on my history of investigative reporting, that's why I've written every story I've ever written, and I've gotten a lot of abuse. The only difference is most people have the intestinal fortitude to lodge their abuse against me by putting their names on it, and apparently the people in this situation don't feel like they need to stand behind their names.
So with all these years of investigative reporting behind you, do people hate reporters now more than ever before, or is it about the same?
In Happy Valley, much more. I break it up between what's at Penn State and then outside of Penn State. We've gotten a bunch of favorable responses about our book from people outside of Penn State. Unfortunately, all the people in Penn State don't put their names on their commentaries.
Yeah, people get really brave when they're anonymous on the internet, don't they?
And I've been the subject of numerous anonymous letters over the years, and dating back to when I was a young kid, my attitude always was, if somebody doesn't have the intestinal fortitude to stand behind their words, then I'm not going to listen to them.
Name of the book once again?
Game Over, Jerry Sandusky, Penn State, and a Culture of Silence.
And you're Bill Moushey, and your co-author was?
Bob Dvorchak. Both of us worked a long time at the Post-Gazette and elsewhere. We've got 80 years of journalism experience behind us.
It's amazing you're not dead.
That's amazing.
On many levels. All right, Bill Moushey, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.